Don't let me stray. Please guide my way onto the path of my being. Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah, I'm calling your name. Oh, Allah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another special Ramadan edition of Let's Talk on your favorite channel, Huda TV. I'm your host, Arkham Rashid. Since the last 10 days of Ramadan are so close, we want to discuss how we can increase our worship in these last 10 days. And we want to discuss different activities we can create for the youth so that they can enjoy these last 10 days. So let's start off as usual by introducing our guest. Assalamu alaikum. If we can get your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself. Go ahead, brother.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. My name is Ali Omar Al-Ghazali. I'm 20 years old and I study Islamic studies at Al-Azhar University.
Alright, Ali, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Brother, if we can get your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is
Wa
Ibrahim
alaikum salam.
Sorani from Germany, and I'm 24 years old, also studying at Azhar University, Islamic law.
Alright, Ibrahim, welcome to the show. Brother, if we can get your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ahmed Anas Kashiri. I'm from the US, specifically from SoCal, Southern California, and I'm currently studying at Al-Azhar University, second year Islamic law.
Alright, welcome to the show, Ahmed Anis.
Thanks for having me.
Brother, if we can get your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
My name is Mahmoud Abdul Sabur. I'm from the States as well, and I'm studying in my third year at Al-Azhar University in the Faculty of Law as well.
Alright, Mahmoud, welcome to the show. Now, brothers, I want to start off by welcoming all four of you guys to the show, and then I want to start off by asking you, what's your favorite part of Ramadan? Why do you look forward to it every year? Go ahead, any one of you guys.
That's a very difficult question, actually. The thing about Ramadan, every year it gets more interesting and you enjoy it more than the last year. This is probably the 20th Ramadan of my life, and I'm enjoying it so far. And you know, my favorite part, there's more than one favorite part actually. One of them has to be, you know, Taraweeh.
I thought you were going to say the good food.
Well, that's one of them. Taraweeh is, you know, people, you know, gathering in masajid to perform Qiyam al-Layl or Salat al-Taraweeh as we call it in Ramadan, you know, and you see all the masajid reading out loud, and usually outside of Ramadan, you know, they don't put the speakers, or they don't outside the masjid you can't hear the recitation
This
of the Quran.
is in Egypt, right? Yeah.
In Egypt, yeah. But in Ramadan especially, if you walk in the streets in the nights of Ramadan, you can hear the different recitations from different masajid all around you. This is something very interesting, and I really enjoy it.
So you look forward to that feeling, that lively
Yes,
feeling
definitely.
that the country
The
goes
spirit. The spirit is special.
Okay, Ibrahim, if I can ask you, what's your favorite part of Ramadan?
My favorite part of Ramadan is, I think there are a lot of things in Ramadan, because Ramadan is the month. But I think it's one of the best opportunities to change yourself, to change your behavior, to change your character. And I think this is what we can see in the people, because especially when I live in Germany, and I'm usually in Germany, and in Ramadan you see people in the masjid, you never see them the whole year. And they're coming to the masjid and they're trying to be the best and to show the best side and the best character, and everybody is like improving himself and improving the others, so everybody is affected of this.
Everybody's trying their
improving
best to
character
change.
now. So I think this is a very good, this is what I love about Ramadan, that people try to be or try to improve their character and try to be the best or improve themselves.
That's quite interesting. If I can ask you guys, what's your favorite part of Ramadan?
I think like Brother Ali mentioned, there's a lot that goes on in Ramadan, and me personally, it's been like evolving Each
Mhm.
Ramadan is something different. But if I had to pinpoint it, I would definitely say at-Taraweeh, praying in the masjid with everyone, and just getting to know yourself better and developing yourself, because of course we know that all of the shayateen are put to the side, and it's just you and your nafs and the struggle going on. So getting to know yourself, like your own shortcomings, what are your good points, what makes you angry, and you can't blame it on anyone but yourself now. And just the Taraweeh, the brotherhood, the whole community, like where I live in the States, is a little bit different from here in Ramadan, because the community is a lot smaller, a lot more close-knit. I mean, I know most of the people that come, so we usually end up breaking fast together. Maybe a certain family will host an actual iftar or something inside of the masjid, and everybody just sits and kind of like talks, and it's a very close, it brings people closer. The experience is beautiful. I think that's probably one of my favorite parts, just being that brotherhood and that togetherness that you feel during Ramadan.
Honest, and you?
Yeah, from all these points, I think what hits me the most is where those close ties that really get to you, because I went to high school in Indonesia, basically, and boarding school, and I did Ramadan for 4 years straight, like over in a boarding school with all of the classmates and whatnot, and I wasn't really at home during Ramadan, and I didn't experience that homely experience of Ramadan, where, for example, like your parents are there, and then your siblings, and then you get to interact more with each other, because it's also the summer, so everyone gets their break and whatnot. And coming back to the U.S., seeing how, as Brother Mahmoud said, of how tightly knit the communities are in the U.S., it gives that strength, to see how everyone, is struggling with you, striving with you in that same point in fasting and whatnot, and you really feel that vibe, with everyone around you. So it really brings the whole brotherhood in and whatnot. It brings everyone together, and I really feel that at home, basically. So.
I think my favorite part of Ramadan is very similar to your guys' favorite part. It's the closeness of the community, how they comes together. I'm not sure how it is in Muslim countries, but like you said, in the West, most of the people that come to the mosque, and the mosques not only serve as just a place to pray. Like in Egypt, I know during the year, I don't know about Ramadan, but during the year, the mosque is just a place where you go and pray. But in the U.S., the mosque is more of a community center. It's not only a place where you pray, they have activities, there's everything going on in the mosque for the Muslim community, the Muslim youth. It's more of a community center / prayer space. So in Ramadan, I like how during Taraweeh, whether you pray or not, but you go to the mosque and you meet all of your friends, and everybody's there, and there's food and there's tea, and you're just hanging out, and then you pray 20 rak'ah. After the 20 rak'ah, or 8 rak'ah, depending on the masjid you go to. But afterwards, you're just hanging out. Then, especially during the last 10 days, because they're coming up, what happens is, in my masjid in the U.S., we tend to come a couple of hours before the tahajjud prayers at night, and everybody's hanging out. Then we do the tahajjud prayers. Then right after tahajjud prayers, everybody's eating together. So it's like this, you feel like you're part of a community. It's the closeness, you're laughing, eating, enjoying, and then it's the same routine. As soon as Fajr hits, everybody prays together and then goes home. Then you'll meet them again the next day for Taraweeh. And the whole month long, it's the same sequence. You're meeting them every day, so it uplifts your spirit.
Yes, I just wanted to add one thing. The closeness and the gathering of people in masajid is a reminder for all of us that this deen, this religion of ours, is not just about maintaining, our, ibadah, like my prayer, my fasting, my zakah. This we have as Muslims. We also have an obligation of, encouraging one another, advising one another. And that's the whole point of, going out praying and congregation and, gathering and all these things. We encourage one another.
It connects us as a community.
Connects us. We are one ummah, one body. as the Prophet ﷺ said.
Thanks for sharing that thought and not holding you back. Now, what I want to get into is, as we know, we're coming to the last 10 days. Let's start off by talking about how we can increase our worships in the last 10 days before we get into what activities we can do for the youth. Let's start off with ourselves. How can one increase their worship, and in what aspects should they increase their worships, and how can they do it in a way that it's consistent and they don't burn out in the first 3 days of the last 10 days, and then the last 7 days they're not doing anything because they burn themselves out. So if we can start with you guys.
Okay, first of all, one of the ways that we can prepare ourselves for these 10 days is to try to realize how important these days or nights are. There's no doubt, and all scholars agree, that these 10 nights of the year are the most valuable 10 nights, especially, and these 10 nights contain the most sacred and the most valuable night in the year, which is Laylatul Qadr, obviously. A night in which ibadah is equivalent to 80 years of ibadah, as Allah says in the Quran, Laylatul Qadri khayru min alfi shahr, like 1,000 months, which is about 80 years. So we should, as Muslims, we should read about the fadl and the virtues of these 10 nights, and read about how the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba dealt with these sacred nights.
That's a good point you brought up there, Laylatul Qadr. It's one of the topics that inshallah we want to get to later on in our conversation. So it's good that you brought it up.
Yeah, we should, I think in general we should realize that time is running out, and we are favored by Allah that we are living these amazing moments, and I'm pretty sure there are many Muslims that we know of or might not know of who didn't make it to this Ramadan, and there are many Muslims under the ground, very regretful for the nights and the hours and even the minutes they wasted in Ramadan, not realizing how important that time is.
And there's they say that the companions of the Prophet ﷺ used to make dua 6 months before Ramadan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow them to see and reach Ramadan.
Yeah, so I would say that preparation for the 10 nights of 10 last nights of Ramadan, or preparation for Ramadan in general, starts before Ramadan. I know it's a bit too late now for those who didn't prepare, but in general, like human being.
Thank you for the glad tidings.
No, like it's not too late, obviously, but we need to, as I said, encourage one another, and this is the whole purpose of this episode here. We're talking, reminding one another, encouraging one another that we should make the best of these moments, the last moments of Ramadan. And inshallah, we hope that Allah accepts from us and grants us, salvation. Because as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, that Allah grants salvation, or like He frees people from the hellfire every single night of Ramadan. And I'm pretty sure that the number of people that will be granted salvation in the last 10 days of Ramadan will be far more than those who got freed before the last nights of Ramadan. So this is something that we need to focus on. Dua, lots of dua. Qira'atul Quran. We should try our best to stick to the Quran, and this was the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Actually, talking about the Prophet ﷺ, he in the last 10 days he used to do i'tikaf. He used to go to the masjid, lock himself in the masjid with Sahaba, and in some narrations it's mentioned that he used to set up like a small tent in the masjid, and he would isolate himself in that tent, like full isolation from his wives, from his friends. This might not be convenient for all of us, because sometimes we have responsibilities towards our families, but those who have an opportunity to isolate themselves and reflect on what they have done this entire year, and trying to come closer to Allah, away from people, you know, away from riyah, away from showing off, away from all these things, just pure and mere isolation, you and Allah. That's one way.
Okay, so if I could quickly summarize the points you said, the first one that I've understood is you need to grasp the moment and understand that Ramadan is about to finish. You have these last 10 days to, you need to completely take advantage of these last 10 days.
Yeah.
And the second point that you mentioned was i'tikaf, a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, where he would go to the masjid and meditate or worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the last 10 days away from society, cutting himself away from anything that's any worldly concerns he has.
Exactly.
Ibrahim, if I can ask you, what do you think are some good ways in which we can increase our worship during the last 10 days of Ramadan?
I think Ramadan is always an opportunity to change yourself. So everyone was thinking about himself before Ramadan, or was supposed to think about himself before Ramadan, and what he is able to change inside Ramadan. So if you have, for example, you have a problem with you are too much sticking to the dunya, so maybe you make i'tikaf. If you have problem or you're a bit greedy or something, you love money too much, so maybe you just try to increase your sadaqat, you're giving out money. Or if you have, for example, alhamdulillah, Ramadan is full of fasting. So the first days of fasting were very hard, now it became a bit easier. So alhamdulillah, you can bring in some other ibadat into your fasting. And one of the most important stuff is one of the most important things is the Quran, to memorize the Quran and to read the Quran, because the Quran is the first thing Allah mentioned when He was speaking about Ramadan. He says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. So this is the first thing Allah is talking about, is the Quran. So I think it's one of the most important things in Ramadan from everything else, even before fasting. And it depends on the person. I think it depends on the person. So if you have a problem with your character, maybe you try to change or to focus on your character and just use this gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this Ramadan and these days and this community and this togetherness, just use it to change yourself the way you want to change, or change yourself to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these last days. And I think a point which is important too, not to force yourself that much, because there are some people, they think, okay, I was like sleeping the first days of Ramadan, now I have to wake up and now I have to get it, and
24 hours
only 10 days left, so I'm only reading Quran, only doing this, and then khalas, they don't do nothing with their families, they don't help in the household, and they just force themselves to do too much. And after Ramadan finished, then everything finished.
And they're burned out by the time Ramadan is done.
No, this is what I mean. So I think this, you can force yourself. You should force yourself, because you have to struggle with your nafs.
But you shouldn't burn yourself out.
Not too much now. I think this is I myself, I see it. And some brothers, they just, as they like waking up after the half of Ramadan or at the end of Ramadan, and then they force themselves too much, and afterwards is finishing everything.
One of the points I really liked that you mentioned was that if you find yourself having an issue, for example, if you're a stingy person, then during the last 10 days, increase giving sadaqah. So take a look at yourself. I like this point that you mentioned. Take a look at yourself and see what's wrong with you, what diseases or inner diseases you have, and try to correct those specific diseases during the last 10 days. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to do that. Honest, if I can ask you now, how do you think we can increase our worship during the last 10 days?
Yeah, so basically there's, as a Muslim, there's no saying for, we're late, for example, for something. We can always start at any given moment, and especially since Ramadan is here, that special chance, a specific month, in those 12 months, because our bodies are basically ordained with time. We sleep with time, when time is night, and then when it's day we wake up, and this and that. So in accordance with time, we have our daily activities as well, and there are like some set times where rituals or worships are really emphasized, and one of those times are Ramadan. So taking the advantage really is, as what the brother said, is a really big thing. And especially for how it differs between people, as how the brother said, where if you're, for example, it's basically looking to what disadvantages you have to what advantages you have. So you take care of that. Muhasabah, you reflect to yourself, you look yourself at the mirror to see. You should write it down, because to me personally, like doing stuff practical is more productive than just thinking out stuff. To me, I can't really like act towards it. I need to like.
So basically, you need to make a schedule saying what things you're going to do on the days of Ramadan, so you have it planned out.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, that's a very good point. Mahmoud, if you can share with us some ideas.
I think that the preparation for Ramadan, one of the brothers mentioned, or you mentioned that the Sahabi, they would start six months before. They had a sort of a shawq or longing for Ramadan, because they knew, alhamdulillah, being around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they knew the true meaning of Ramadan, and being the best of generations, they were just pretty pure people. So they looked forward to Ramadan, whereas some of us, we don't actually look forward to it. We are saying, oh man, Ramadan this year is going to be in the summertime, and we're counting how many hours are going to be in the day, and we say to ourselves, okay, if I stay in America this year, the day is 20 hours long. So, and if I go to Egypt, it's like, I don't know, 15 or something. I'm going to do my Ramadan wherever the day is shorter. And, I'm going to save all of my vacation days up, for Ramadan, so that I can just sleep all day and, and eat all night. The preparation for Ramadan comes, like you mentioned, how the Sahabi did beforehand. Definitely, we have a reminder for Ramadan when we start coming into what we know as the holy months, starting with Rajab. As soon as Rajab starts, you have different events. It's a holy month. It's one of the four what we call the four haram months, or the four sacred months. So you're already in the mindset, okay, Rajab is here. That means we have Sha'ban and then Ramadan. So let me start getting into the habit of fasting right now. Fast some days in Rajab, like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to fast. He started fasting more and more. He would fast, of course, every month. He had certain days where he would fast every month and every week, but it seemed he would start fasting more and more during Rajab and during Sha'ban. There's a tradition, a prophetic tradition, that says that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to fast. The most that he would fast outside of Ramadan is in Sha'ban. It said sometimes that it would seem that he would fast the whole month of Sha'ban. And sometimes he wouldn't fast so much in Sha'ban, but the preparation starts beforehand, before even Ramadan begins. The preparation for these last 10 days. Start fasting. Start doing more sadaqah. Start watching your temperament, how you're dealing with your family, how you're dealing with other people. Start trying to control your anger from now. Start trying to control your urges. Start trying to control your stinginess and your ri'ah and all of these different things from now. Because what you'll notice too is that this is a time when your nafs and when shaitan really starts going into overdrive, because he knows that he's going to be out of the picture during Ramadan. So he's trying to get you programmed before Ramadan starts to be the same lazy, stingy, ungrateful person that you were outside of Ramadan. And Allah Ta'ala gives us this opportunity to remove all of that. But if you're already programmed before Ramadan starts to just be on what we call it, cruise control, to be a lazy person, then you're just going to cruise through Ramadan doing the same thing. If you start beforehand, months beforehand, like the companions did, and they're the best example, so let's follow the examples that we have been given. Start months beforehand, at least trying, do some extra fasting and things like this. And I think that Ramadan itself, khalas, once Ramadan begins, then you really are preparing for the last 10 days. Because usually, especially nowadays, Ramadan is in the summertime now, and it's really hot and hard, and depending on where you live at anyway. You have the first part of Ramadan where you're sort of getting into the hang of it. If you didn't start already, previously fasting and stuff, you don't have a habit of fasting, you're kind of getting into the hang of fasting. It's, you're tired in the day, especially if you have to work. You're kind of grumpy at night. You don't want to see anybody. Your legs are hurting in Taraweeh unless you have one of the masjids where the salah is kind of short, After that first week, though, you get used to not eating so much, and you get used to standing up at night, and you get into the second part of Ramadan, and it's kind of like, okay, I can do this now.
Yeah.
Okay, during these days, this is the best prep time. This is when you start reading more Quran. Start trying to develop your own personal relationship with Al Quran, because like the brother mentioned, Shahru Ramadan is when Allah Ta'ala sent down the Quran. Shahru Ramadan, it's full of blessings. The month of Ramadan, if you read the different ayat in Quran that speak about Ramadan, speak about the holy months, if you read the different traditions, you will find that the month itself, every single day of the month, is full of blessings. I think you spoke about it in the previous Ramadan episodes. But you have to do, just bring this stuff in your mind, make it present in your mind. What sort of blessings are going on, and what I will be able to take advantage of, so that when the last 10 days of Ramadan come, you're ready, you're waiting for it. You have a love in your heart, and you're saying, yes, Allahu Akbar, I made it. Alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala gave me life to be able to make these last 10 days, and start looking for Laylatul Qadr. And I guess we're going to speak about it later on, but you're longing for this thing right now. It says that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, during the last 10 days, that he would do i'tikaf, like Ali mentioned, and leave his wives. He wouldn't go to his wives. He would just stay in the masjid, do ibadah, read Quran, make salah, make dua to Allah Ta'ala. It's hard to do if all month long you were hanging out with your friends and just kind of coming to the masjid for the different ethnic meals and stuff that people are preparing. Of course, if you're living, we live in the West, so they usually have different types. Yeah. One night you have the brothers from this area of the world cooking, and the next night like that. So you have a lot of different types of food and stuff. So if you're just coming for the food, then it's going to be kind of hard to really dig in the last 10 days, to dig in your ibadah, I mean. But if you're coming because you want to come, if you're coming because you want to make yourself a better person, if you're coming because you have seen, the different aspects of your personality that you don't like, or that Allah Ta'ala doesn't like, or that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has spoken about and said that these are vices inside of humankind, and these are the things that we need to change, and you are actually actively trying to change them and have been making some progress, then when the last 10 days comes, you'll be a step ahead of the game. Inshallah.
All right, thanks for that wonderful overview of all of Ramadan and before Ramadan. Thank you very much, Mahmoud. Dear viewers, I just want to recap on what we spoke about. Until now, we spoke about different ways in which we can increase our worship for the last 10 days of Ramadan as they're coming up. Now, after we come back from a short break, we will speak about some activities that we can create so that the youth can enjoy the last 10 days of Ramadan. So stay tuned.
How perfect my Allah is, and I praise Him. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah. How perfect you are, Allah, Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Welcome to Cosmic Proof, the one and only program that leads you to the truth wherever it is, for my sake and your sake.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan Mubarak from Huda TV. This is your brother Sulaiman Salim, and I want to encourage you to tune in to a show that is spiritually uplifting and heart-changing and life-transforming here on Huda TV. It is called Gates of Goodness, and it takes place every night from Saturday to Thursday at 12 o'clock Mecca time. I look forward to seeing you during the live show. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah.
Welcome back to Let's Talk. Now, before we went for that short break, we were discussing different ways in which we can increase our worship for the last 10 days of Ramadan, or the last 10 nights of Ramadan. Now, we said after we come back from that short break, we will speak about different activities that we can create for the youth so that they can enjoy these last 10 nights. So let's ask Brother Mahmoud to start us off. Go ahead, Brother Mahmoud.
I'm not a very creative guy, but I'll tell you some of the different things that we sort of do in our community.
Sure.
We try to incorporate plays for the children, have them actually come together and do plays about auspicious events that happened in Ramadan in the history of Islam. You have some different events, like one of the most famous is the Battle of Badr. Speak about it, maybe make poems or speeches, read history. When you say activities, I lean more towards educational activities and programs more so than like games and things. Memorization of Quran, just trying to encourage the children to get more in tune with the Quran, even if they're just memorizing it, and not necessarily, the children don't necessarily understand Quran, but they memorize it and start building a connection with the Quran themselves, so that when they get older like us, they're not starting from now and trying to build up a relationship with Ramadan. They're not trying to figure out these things. What should we do to prepare ourselves for the last 10 days? They already know, and they can be like those companions that we mentioned earlier who started, months beforehand waiting for Ramadan. I think also for the children, it's very important to speak to them about the self-purification, even though they're kids and they don't really involve themselves in the things that we involve ourselves in as adults, from harassing each other and being, what do you call it, showing off and these different things. But it'll be in the back of their mind, so that when they do grow older and start understanding these things more, they'll already have a sort of background about how to avoid these things, how to avoid these bad character traits, and how to make the most out of their Ramadan. So I think overall we can just incorporate educational programs in a way that children can understand, of course, that highlight what are the fada'il, or the virtues of Ramadan, and fasting and reading Quran and the different historical aspects of Ramadan.
Okay, that's quite interesting. One thing that we do at our masjid, we call it the youth itikaf. And it's one night dedicated out of the last 10 nights, usually an odd night, for the youth. So everybody that's doing itikaf in the masjid is from the age of 13 to 21. I don't know what their age limit is, but it's generally the youth, and they all come together, there's speeches, like you said, there's different stories, and there's many activities for the youth. And I think this is a very good idea, because what it does, it benefits the community in two ways. The first, the youth get a night to hang out, listen to stories, listen to speeches, come together, meet their friends. And the second is that the parents, when they drop their kids off, it gives them a chance to also focus that night in worship. They have time, seclusion away from their kids. They don't have to worry about their kids running around the house, their kids doing this. They have that specific time that night for themselves, and they can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that night. So I found that quite interesting. Ahmed, if you can share with us an activity or two that you think would help.
Yeah, basically, what the parents should do is what Brother Mahmoud said, is to really emphasize on education, on basically the ruh of Ramadan, the spirit of Ramadan, as pertaining to before and during Ramadan. To say how, for example, in public schools where other holidays and other national days or whatnot are really, they're really hyped about, to say.
Looking forward to.
Yeah, people look forward to seeing, Independence Day. People look forward to see this day and that day. But then when you get to Ramadan, I'm personally seeing to the basic youth, they just see it as, okay, Ramadan.
It's just
it's bland. You don't see that, oh my gosh, it's Ramadan. You don't see that excitement. And through like basic education, like for example, relevant talks, let's talk, as to say that masjids would hold with imams that are really relevant to the youth as well. So they would come together, for example, and gather around and basically have productive talks about productivity in life and how Islam syncs with their life and how Ramadan goes in with everything. And all those are necessary in creating that vibe in which Ramadan is seeked to thrive into. So those activities, for example, like those activities of relevance to the youth, as to say, just comparing to how public schools or other national days or holidays are, for example, to see the relevance.
That's quite interesting. The next thing I want to get into is something called Zakatul Fitr. So first we're going to start off by watching a little video, and then after that we'll continue our discussion, so stay tuned.
Perfect my Allah is and I praise Him. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanallah, how perfect you are, Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
What is Zakatul Fitr? An amount of money that is paid at the end of the month of Ramadan. The next question is, why do we pay Zakatul Fitr? So there are two things that are mentioned in a very beautiful narration. First and foremost, Zakatul Fitr serves as a means for making up the shortcomings that there might have been in our fast. Much like doing istighfar after the prayer, or even the sajdatul sahud, the two sajdas of forgetfulness that are done at the end of the prayer, compensating for the shortcomings. The second reason is to help those in need, to provide something for those people who otherwise might be struggling on the day of Eid, so that they can also enjoy the end of the month of Ramadan and the day of Eid. Now getting to the question, who has to pay fitrah? Who has to pay Zakatul Fitr? So the answer to that question is, if you qualify to pay zakat, if you are of a financial status where you pay zakat, your basic needs are met, and according to the difference of opinion, you have enough extra money, savings, for at least a year, and you pay your zakat, you also qualify to pay Zakatul Fitr. There's another opinion as well, but what I'm sharing with you is the general majority opinion that is given to folks. The next question is that how much Zakatul Fitr do you give? So there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that mentions different items of food. 1 sa', which is about 6 pounds, of wheat, barley, raisins, dates, etc. Now that creates quite a bit of a spectrum. Could be anything from $8 to $25. So just check with your local organization, masjid, community leader, imam, and go with whatever they are recommending, because they'll be recommending something within that spectrum that is more applicable to your community and your situation. However, one thing that I have to mention here when talking about how much Zakatul Fitr that you give, Zakatul Fitr is paid on behalf of every member of the household. So the head of the household will pay for not only himself or herself, but they will pay for every member of the household, including small children, even babies. If a woman is pregnant in the home, you do not pay on behalf of the unborn child, but rather you pay for all the members of the household, including even a newborn baby, but you do not pay for an unborn child. Who do you give Zakatul Fitr to? You give Zakatul Fitr to whoever can receive, is eligible to receive Zakat. Alright? The same person can also receive Zakatul Fitr. Start with your own community, because that's where it's most preferable. When also talking about who you give your Zakatul Fitr to, somebody might say, well, I just give it to the masjid. I just put in the donation box at the masjid that is labeled Zakatul Fitr. It is okay, it is permissible to delegate somebody else to discharge your Zakatul Fitr on your behalf, and that's basically what you're doing in that situation. The next question is, when do you give Zakatul Fitr? So when talking about when you give it, the Prophet of Allah ﷺ says that Zakatul Fitr has to be discharged and taken care of before you stand for Salatul Eid. But what that basically means is that it reaches the person who is eligible to receive it. It is delivered to such a person before you stand for their Eid prayer. So if you arrive for their Eid prayer and you drop it in the box that is labeled Zakatul Fitr at that time, that is not the same thing. So based off of that, even the companions or narrations, they talk about giving Zakatul Fitr a day or two before Eid. The fuqaha have stated, the scholars state that it can be given. Different opinions, some say it can be given in the last half of Ramadan. Once the 15th arrives, you can give it from there. Some say you can give it any time during the month of Ramadan. My own personal recommendation, especially if you're going to be giving it to the masjid or to a local community to discharge it on your behalf, you are delegating them to deliver it on your behalf, then I would definitely have to recommend that you give it at least a couple of days in advance, at the very least, so that they have enough time to deliver it on your behalf. Lastly, there's a question of what do you give in Zakatul Fitr? Do you have to give those exact food items, or can you give money in place of that? It's a classical difference of opinion. There are narrations from the companions, some of the practice of the companions, and there are opinions and narrations even from the tabi'un where they allowed for other items, even money, to be given in place of those exact food items, because that just might be more practical and even more beneficial for the recipients of Zakatul Fitr. The same ruling is given by many contemporary scholars today, and I would recommend the same thing, that it is most definitely permissible to give money instead. If you go ahead and give food items, more power to you, but it is most definitely acceptable and permissible for you to give money instead of that, and in some cases might even be a little bit more easier or beneficial for the recipients.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Welcome back to Let's Talk. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed that short little video clip in which the Sheikh explained the rules on Zakatul Fitr. Now, we want to discuss these rules more widely, and we'll start off by asking Ali his thoughts on the video. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, it's one of Allah's blessings that after the month of Ramadan, after the Muslims have been depriving themselves of water drinks or food, Allah gave him this Eid, this beautiful Eid, a few days of pleasure, of celebrating. Definitely not celebrating the end of Ramadan, because everyone is sad and saddened after Ramadan is finished, but celebrating the spirit of Eid, and coming, buy new clothes and wear new clothes, and visiting family and stuff like that. That's part of our sunnah. And we as Muslims are encouraged to purify physically for Eid. Like, it's from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to have a shower on the night of Eid, to wear the best clothes, and to wear some sort of perfume as well. But we are also obliged to pay Zakat al-Fitr right before Ramadan is finished. And the interesting point here is that the word zakat itself, literally, it means purification. It comes from the root word zakah, which means to purify yourself. So Zakat al-Fitr is a form of purification, a spiritual purification, because when we enter Eid, the days of Eid, we enter clean and pure, both physically and spiritually as well.
And it's a very good point you mentioned. I just want to comment on it quickly. A lot of the scholars say that one of the reasons why we pay Zakat al-Fitr is if there's anything missing in our fast, or anything during Ramadan that we did that didn't please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Zakat al-Fitr will cover that, those mistakes of ours.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ibrahim, if I can get your thoughts on it.
No, I think Zakat al-Fitr is, alhamdulillah, this is what the scholar said, and I think a lot of the people, or a lot of the brothers, they just see it like something natural. So they just give it. It's just money they're giving. But
without thinking about it.
No, it's not just money they're giving, and it's this purifying. So I think you have to have the niyyah too, to purify yourself, or the mistakes you made in Ramadan, or the things you didn't complete in Ramadan, just to to purify yourself spiritually, and just to finish this month, that Allah inshallah ta'ala will be will be taking you out of Jahannam, of the hellfire, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with you. And I think this is I think the spiritual side of this, a lot of people, they don't
They
see
just
it.
look
They
at
don't-
it as
they don't- they don't have
just
it.
an act that I
No,
have to
it's just
pay
like,
$10
okay, you
or
got-
whatever the price
we have
is.
we have to give money now, and in Germany it's 10 euros. Usually it's
That's why we don't pray Eid in Germany.
it's about 10 euros now.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, okay, I have to pay.
Mm.
It's not like, I have to pay, but it's just to purify yourself. And I think this is what is missing at the Muslims.
That's a very good point. I just want to quickly remind the viewers that before they pay Zakatul Fitr, think about the intention, why we're giving this money, and let's do it for the sake of Allah, instead of, as we usually do it every year, just pay whatever the masjid asks for. This is the 10 euros, the $10, the 15 Junaid, whatever it may be that the masjid asks for. But think about why you're giving this money. This money, you're giving it to create a love between you and your brothers, to count for anything that you missed out during the month of Ramadan, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive any of the mistakes that you made during that month. Now Mahmoud, if I can ask you your thoughts on Zakatul Fitr.
I think what you just said is the core, at the core of it is purification, and it just follows in line with what we've been going through all throughout Ramadan. We've been doing a purification of ourselves, trying to become closer to Allah Ta'ala. And I think the speaker mentioned it in the video. It's sort of like a band-aid for the Zakatul Fitr is like a band-aid for the things that, the naqis things that you may have, fell short on during Ramadan, to try to complete it or to purify it. But even more than that, it is a way, because it's not just, he mentioned the zakat having the nisab, which is it's one opinion amongst the scholars, but there's another opinion amongst the scholars that it is really just for every single man and woman and child. We don't have slaves. We're not supposed to have slaves. I guess there's some controversy around the world about slavery nowadays. May Allah Ta'ala guide those people who are going through these changes. But every man, woman, child, free person, every slave contributes. It's a hadith of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that says so. They pay the zakah, zakatul fitr, if they have enough to live through that day. This is another opinion. As you know, if you have enough food in your house, and of course the origin was that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the companions, they would give out certain types of food, dates or raisins, or food in general. Dates and raisins, of course, were the staple foods, I guess, in the Hijaz at the time. And nowadays, of course, we give money because money seems to go further. And I guess I've been in Azhar too long. We start talking about fiqh. But it says that everyone gives from what they have, as long as they have enough in their house to make it through that day, just so that it can be a complete communal act. No, a communal act. It doesn't have anything to do with rich and poor necessarily. Of course, you're giving to the poor, but it is so that we are all on the same plane. Just like in Hajj, everyone is the same. We're all giving. We're all purifying ourselves. We all have the same goal at the end of the day. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We all need purification. We came from Allah Ta'ala. We're going back to Allah Ta'ala. We all need the same purification. And on top of that, the communal sort of giving and stuff, it is it's the origins that you were supposed to go and search for people who need it actually, or the way it used to be done. Of course, you can give it to the masjid. There's no problem with that. Especially, it's kind of hard, I guess, in America where we come from, to find deserving people who qualify for getting the zakat. But if you're in a situation where you know of people who are deserving or who qualify to get the zakatul fitr, then it may be better. And I think personally that it's better to go and find these people and give it to them personally. Because sometimes different masjids and politics and things kind of get taken out of context.
And it's also reviving a sunnah of the Prophet.
Exactly, you're bringing back a real sunnah, and you'll feel. I think you'll feel the benefit of that too when you actually put something that someone needs in their hand, whether it's clothing or food or money or whatever the case may be, as opposed to dropping it in a box in the masjid and going about your business.
That's some very good points you mentioned. Thank you for that. Now I want to thank all of you brothers for joining me for this wonderful conversation and wonderful episode that we did. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make these last 10 days of Ramadan wonderful last 10 days for us and for all the Muslims around the world. Dear viewers, I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode. I hope you guys enjoyed and benefited from tonight's episode. The last 10 nights of Ramadan are coming up. Let's try our best to increase our worship during these last 10 nights, and let's try to create activities for the youth so that they can also enjoy these last 10 nights of Ramadan. And until next time, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Perfect my Allah is, and I praise Him. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Subhanallah, how perfect you are, Allah. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Subhanallah. How perfect you are, Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, Allah. I'm calling your name, Allah. I call you, I need you, Allahu Akbar, Allah. Your mercy is great.